Welcome to the Progtalks by the Progspace. Welcome to the Progtalks, an interview series by the Progspace where we will be talking to musicians in all corners of the progressive music scene. Welcome back to the Progtalks, everyone. I'm Uncle Prog, as always. Before we start today's episode, I want to quickly mention that we have a link in the description this time for like a buy us a coffee kind of thing, where you can support us a bit. And the content we're making. We're very thankful for any support, likes, subscriptions, of course. With that out of the way, I want to introduce today's guest, vocalist and guitarist Sondre Skollevoll from Moron Police. How are you doing, Sondre?
I am doing just dandy.
That's what we like to hear, you know. I'm just going to jump into the questions because I have a lot of stuff I want to discuss with you today. You released one of my favorite albums of last year, A Boat on the Sea. But you guys have, of course, been around for a while because your first album, The Propaganda Machine, was out back in 2012, I believe. So would you give our watchers a little, brief history of Moron Police?
Sure. So we're from, it started with me and the drummer who's still there. And we're from very small towns, Farsund and Lyngdal. Lyngdal is a shithole, Farsund is paradise. And so we started very young. I started writing, we had a band before that called Sky Blazer, named after the Super Nintendo game. And so I wrote a lot of songs, and we had and then a bassist came in, and we started recording the stuff. So the first album from 2012, the songs there from when I was like 16, a bit prepubescent or whatever you call it.
Yeah.
And then we released a more progressive thing, a much heavier thing called Defenders of the Small Yard in 2000 and something.
14.
14, yeah. And then because of life and having to grow up and get an education and all that crap, it took a long time. And then in 2019, I believe, we released A Boat on the Sea, which surprisingly did very well, out in the world.
That's something I wanted to ask you about. Of course, I discovered you guys with 2014's Defenders of the Small Yard. And then, like you mentioned, it took 6 years, almost 6 years for you to release A Boat on the Sea, right? But then it seemed like A Boat on the Sea was a big boost for you guys when it came to the attention you were getting, How do you feel about the response of that album now, in hindsight? And did it change things for you guys?
First of all, we were surprised, and because generally I've been writing this music and releasing it to it's been for especially interested people. It's been hard to, because we were in a little town. We don't have a management. We do everything ourselves. It's hard to get the promo thing going and all that stuff, and we can't really play live that much. So it's been hard. But that was fine by me. There was never any intention of actually earning money from doing this. But then Boat on the Sea came out, and it sort of just gathered steam by itself, and so it just sort of naturally got talked about, and people checked it out, and it was very surprising and a lot of fun. I don't think it's gonna happen again. I think that was maybe like our 15 minutes of relative progressive fame, but it was a lot of fun, and it, like, when you write music, what you really want, at least what I want, is for as many people to hear it. I don't care if they hate it. I really like if they like it, but generally you just want your art or your music, to be heard. So to have so many people actually listen to the album was very fun and validating at the same time, just think, oh, there's people who, they like this, they care about this. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
So it was fun.
Yeah. And I saw it ending up on a lot of like best of the year lists, and people really, really took it to heart, the album.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we've always been very divisive. If we take Defenders of the Small Yard, our 2014 album, it's a bit like, it's too heavy for the people who like the pop melodies. It's not metal enough for the people who like the really heavy stuff. It's prog, but it's not, doesn't have any of that retro stuff.
Yeah.
So you sort of, what we say in Norwegian, fall between chairs. I don't know if they say that in English.
Well,
so when Bone on the Sea came out, it's sort of simplified a little bit. It's got more of a just progressive pop rock thing, not as much metal, and it's sort of, I think it made it a little bit easier for people to find it. But you also get people who actually like vehemently hate it because it's so uplifting.
Oh yeah,
which I am very, very fine with. I like when people tell me like I fucking hate that album. I was like, what kind of music do you like? I like black metal.
Yeah,
I like black metal too, but I understand where you're coming from. If you like black metal, you're probably not going to enjoy that album very much.
No. Well, I guess, some people who like, just like me, I like black metal. I like Moron Police. You have those people, but in general, I know what you're referring to. It has a certain uplifting, positive quality to the music, and that's not for everyone. And you touched on that. Reading the description of that album, you talked about letting go of your metal origins sort of and focusing a bit more on the progressive pop and rock side. Was that something like that happened naturally, or did you sort of have in mind that we're going to change our output or our music?
No, it was I'd written a lot of these songs parallel to some other songs. Maybe it would have been like maybe a solo record or something like that, but because I felt like it needed to be heavy, and there was also a little thing because of our bassist, who's a fantastic guy, but he's a pretty like hardcore metal dude, black metal, all kinds of different genres, and I was always a little bit anxious about showing these songs because they're all in a major key.
Yeah.
And so I thought, okay, I'll do this on the side, but then he left on good terms. And then I was like, well, okay, let's do them. So it wasn't really intentionally that they just popped out that way.
Yeah.
And the way they are recorded is actually a lot heavier than when I made the demos back in the day. For some reason, they had a lot more like indie guitar. The guitars are pretty. There's a lot of gain on them. It's just that I use a capo on the 9th fret on a lot of them, so a lot of the heaviness sort of disappears into that though. But it was natural. It's just that's how the songs popped up, when I was writing them. I remember like on the debut album, you guys even had like some like artist names, like Master Boot Style and Lord Fartabelly and stuff, but that was quickly abandoned, right? And in relation to that, I also want to ask you, I always want to ask about the name Moron Police. Where did that come from? A lot of people do. Well, it was just when we had the last band called Skyblazer, based on the Super Nintendo thing. I started playing in an open C tuning, the same tuning that Devin Townsend uses, stuff like that. And I found that I really, really liked that. But it lends itself to much heavier music. And Skyblazer wasn't heavy. It was sort of almost like power metal or power rock or something like that. And so we decided, well, let's start a new band. Let's do this. And I just looked at we just wrote down different names, and I remember at some point we bought some military helmets at a sort of a garage sale thing, and I think it was me or the drummer who shouted, "Here comes the Moron Police." It had the MP on stuff, and I wrote it down, and when I was looking at names, like, it's okay, we'll use that. And so, but it was never really meant to be the band name, or like,
I see.
The name for my output is just sort of stuck. I mean, we haven't made it easy for ourselves with that name, which our old bassist would constantly remind us about. And it would there's probably a lot of truth to that, because the minute you start doing something that's a little bit more serious, you will be sort of disregarded pretty quickly.
Yeah, I guess you're right in that. I know about people who have sort of been introduced to your music and told me, I would never have picked up that album on my own, because it's, it doesn't seem like the kind of music I would listen to with the name and, but I think you guys are especially with the last album, you really sort of reached out there and got into people that might normally not have listened to you, that attention was given, Let's...
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I just want to say, like, I think it's sort of changed a little bit because it used to be a crux sort of name, but now because of the album art and what the music actually sounds like, it's not a positive thing, but it's almost a positive thing because people are like, what, that name, and what's this? So now they're more surprised, more like when we had songs called Teabag Your Grandma, which is one of my favorite songs I've ever written. But when you've got a band called Moron Police and the first song on the album is called Teabag Your Grandma, I mean, your expectations are going to be low going in if you even give it a try. I understand that, but it is what it is. I really like the name now, and it's not. I mean, there are some very silly names around there. I mean, there's Destiny Potato and like
Towhider,
Towhider, which is great. They're great guys. It's just a silly name, and we are very silly people. In life in general, we are very silly, so it's a good reflection on how silly we are in our personalities.
Yeah, and I guess it's like it, like you mentioned, it sort of makes even more sense now with the latest album, and the people just need to realize that this is not a novelty act. It's a band in its own right. Yeah.
Yes, and that's the problem, right? Because you hear that name and you think it's it's not serious. It's a joke. It's and we struggle with that our entire career, right? So I'm just aware of it. It doesn't really. Well, I won't say it doesn't bother me, but it doesn't bother me a lot. I mean, no, exactly. I understand that. Yeah. I understand it very much. So it's fine.
Yeah. Well, let's move on from the album and talk a bit about the upcoming EP that you guys are releasing on October the 29th, right? That's
I had actually forgotten we're releasing an EP. Yeah, we're releasing an EP.
The Stranger and the I'll let you know, it's called The Stranger and the Hightide.
What a cool name.
Yeah, the first singles are already out, the title track was released towards the end of August, right? And then the 24th of September, the second single, Waiting for Wasteland, came out. What can you tell us about the EP?
It's a bunch of songs that didn't really fit on our main albums. I write a lot of songs in different genres. I like mixing genres. I preface that by saying, like, people think that I change genres a lot just to do it. I don't. It's just that's how the songs just pop up. I don't like sit down writing a song. Okay, I'm going to do a disco part. I'm going to do a funk part. No. That's just how they pop up. And so sometimes there are songs that don't have any really genre bending going on. So for some reason, I've written a lot of like country rock songs, and I don't want Moron Police to be sort of hampered by a certain sound, right? But I at the same time don't feel like they should be on the main albums, maybe a song or something like that. So I thought about, like, well, maybe if we do these sort of side quest EPs where we just explore different things and sort of focus on one thing. So this is the first of most likely many little EPs that sort of explore different things that I do as a songwriter. But the EP is a country rock sort of, but it sounds like. It sounds like a song from Defenders of the Small Yard called "The Soul Train of the Damned," and this is sort of it's a sort of a conceptual sequel to it. There's a sort of a narrative story going on as well. So that's what it is. It's sort of a side quest for us, and it's a lot of fun to do.
Yeah, well, I've been lucky enough to get a chance to listen to the EP, and it's quite different than a boat, but at the same time, it's quite clear that it's Moron Police we're listening to, and like you mentioned, it has somewhat of a country western feel, including the fantastic cover by Thomas Falla Eriksen. That's where did these country and western inspirations come from? Did you watch western movies? Did you listen to this kind of music?
Well, not really. Not at all. Maybe it's because I'm from Lista, which is known for being very Americanized. A lot of people there, they moved to America, and they came. My mom grew up in Brooklyn, for example, and they brought a lot of the Southern flavor back. So yeah, there's people there that drive around with the South will rise again and all that sort of stuff.
American.
They don't really know what it. Yeah, they don't really know what it actually means, I think, but they still do. I'm going to open the beer. Sorry about this.
You should absolutely do that. Yeah.
Yes. So there's probably some inspiration from that because of the whole. There's a place called Vanse, which is from the Netherlands, but close to the sea, Vanse.
Yeah,
and it's completely Americanized. They just got a little mini Brooklyn bridge over a little river. There's a place that only imports American stuff like cowboy hats and chocolate, and you name it, they've got it. There's a diner. The square is called Brooklyn Square.
Nice.
And so there's probably some influences from there. But for me, it's just that when I write a song, I don't sit down and say I'm going to write a country song. I just start playing around or fiddling with an instrument and say, oh, what's this? Oh, and sometimes sometimes a part of a song pops up, sometimes an entire song pops up, and sometimes they're country songs. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But I realized that I got like 4 of these. That's an EP. And so it's strange, and I realize it's very confusing to people coming off of Boat on the Sea to this. Like, is this what they're doing now? Yeah. And so I've tried to no. The next main album is not this at all. At all, but this is just, we wanted to do this, and I think like from a commercial standpoint, like what we should be doing right now is Boat on the Sea Part 2, right? Because that works, and we should do more of that. But that's not how I write music. It just appears, right? So I just sort of got to follow the flow. It's not good for business, but it's fun.
Well, I guess being a progressive rock or metal musician is, for most bands, not good for business anyway. It's not the way you
No.
Yeah.
And also in the very real sense of the word progressive, right?
Yeah.
To actually progress, if you can apply it to many things, but let's apply it to our sound, our way of doing things, right? So this is a progressive way to move forward.
Exactly.
In a sense, right?
I find it interesting also what you mentioned about, people saying about you putting parts into the music just to do it or whatever. I feel like that's a general criticism that is leveled towards progressive music often, right? That people who don't necessarily listen too much to this kind of music is like saying they're being weird just to be weird. But that's not really what you're doing, right?
No, not at all. If anything, I think Moron Police and the music is a very good reflection of my personality.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of my personality in that music because I'm self-taught as well. So I have my influences, of course, but I don't think they're that obvious. But a lot of people would say oh, yeah, I can hear you've listened to a lot of Primus and Mr. Bungle.
Yeah.
But at the time when we released Defenders of the Small Yard, I hadn't listened to Mr. Bungle or Primus. It was just sort of a happy coincidence. I have now, and I really love it. But at the same time, people will often compare, the first 2 Mr. Bungle albums. I don't really like those albums. I really love California. I think it's a pop masterpiece because I tend to go towards melodies, and the melodies on California are fantastic.
Yeah.
And it's weird, but it's sort of, the weirdness isn't what defines it. It's the songs that are great. Right,
exactly. Yeah. And I think, once again, I think you touch on something really important that I experience a lot as a music journalist, because we have this tendency to pigeonhole stuff, right? And I will ask people, what your music sounds a lot like this band or this band, are you inspired by them? And more often than not, I hear what you just said, we haven't really listened to that, or we're aware of them now, but we didn't really, in the beginning.
No,
we didn't
but
know.
I mean, you need to sort of give, if you're writing something about music, it's good to give the people something to hang on to, what does this sound like? So it doesn't, if for the most part, it's the bands that we get sort of compared to, that I take that as a badge of honor, right?
Yeah,
so,
of course.
So no problem with that.
Yeah, and I think you're right in that, but at the same time, it's interesting that a lot of bands sort of end up at these places, and people are very quick to jump to conclusions that you're inspired by this or that, but that's not necessarily true, right? So people have had the chance to hear the 2 singles, but of course there's 4 tracks on the EP. Yes. Would you give us a little insight into the other 2 songs, or is that something you want to keep for fans to be surprised by?
I mean, the two singles are the two best songs. I really like the I feel that it's true. I mean, but I really like the other songs as well, but they're not as immediate as the two singles. If they are immediate, that's up to you. But yeah, there's even sort of a ballad, and it has like a book opener and a book closer, which I'm a big fan of. So it ends how it starts in many ways, and I like that. There's also a tie-in conceptually to the next main Moron Police album, which will be a concept album. Jesus Christ, help me! Because you got to do one, right? When you got the chance, and it's fun to do it now when we have more people like sort of at least paying attention a little bit to what we're doing. So it ties into that. But yeah, I really like the first song. My dad thinks it sounds like Mark Knopfler, which is a high praise from him. So but I think I like the ballad the most, the last one, because it's the most simple, the most simple song we've ever done. Me and Lars, our keyboard player, when we listen to that song, it's like, how is this so simple? Because we're used to doing, like, he plays in Major Parkinson, right? And so do I. Exactly. We're used to doing like all these weird turns, and so it's just strange to have a song that's just a ballad. Well,
I guess it's nice as well to have like to do different stuff, right? You talked about actually being progressive in the true sense of the word, and part of that is like exploring new territory, right? So yeah, talking about that you had a very nice selection of guest musicians appearing on a boat. What about this new EP? Do you have anyone with you there, or is this like pure undiluted Moron Police?
Oh shit! I have to think. We were going to use the same guy who played fiddle on Defenders of the Small Yard, but I fucked up the recording process. I haven't told him that yet, so I couldn't use it, which is sad because like the fiddle would have been nice, but at the same time, it's just us, right? Yeah. So it's fun it's just us, and of course we recorded a lot of them live, but there's also lots of overdubs because I love doing overdubs. But it's just us. Oh Jesus, I might be forgetting someone. Yeah. I don't think I am. I am. No, it's just us.
This is just the pure Moron Police experience, right?
But doing something that we've never done before.
Well, I guess that's also part of the Moron Police experience. Listening to you guys, there's always going to be something new coming up. And you also mentioned in something I saw something that was written about you, and I quote that you have far too many songs flying around. So like you mentioned before, right, that's something that means that EPs might happen again in the future.
I have a few lined up already. And I also, when it comes to like the main albums, I have a very, very strict like quality control as what comes to like it has to be inspired, it has to be catchy, and I know when it's right. Yeah. And I've got all these other songs that are like they're not quite there, but I really like them, but I think they're more for me. But at the same time, like it'd be fun to release them, and some of them are very good. So yeah, and there's going to be different genres. I think there's one that's purely instrumental, and it's all sort of keyboard, like synths and stuff. It's just me and Lars and the rest of it. So I'm not playing guitar at all. I'm not singing. Wow. Which is going to be if everything goes to plan, it's going to be a follow-up, like sort of like not a prologue. What's the other one?
Epilogue.
Epilogue to the next main album.
Yeah.
So the story picks up when the story ends on the main album. It'll pick up with an EP, but the EP is instrumental and there's no vocals.
I see. Well, that's interesting, and I guess it's nice to have that sort of outlet for the ideas that doesn't necessarily conceptually fit into the full-length album idea, right? If you are enjoying this interview, please head over to theprogspace.com for more reviews, articles, pictures and interviews all about progressive music. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. theprogspace.com. I've heard people say that they're really surprised when they start listening to or reading the lyrics. because it seems there's quite a serious core there, being full of irony and sarcasm, but it often clashes with like the upbeat, positive feel of the music. To me, that sometimes it gives it even more weight, Could you tell me a little bit about the lyrical content and where your inspirations for writing comes from?
Yeah, I think I should preface, like, it's always been like that. Even on the first album, which and even the songs like Teabag Your Grandma, it's supposed to be a social commentary about the advent of pornography and streaming, and how it's gonna desensitize you to everything. I think we're seeing that now. It's always been there, but I used to use like too heavy sort of imagery that nobody would understand it. It would just be me. And so on Born on the Sea, I toned it down a little bit. But the juxtaposition between like the sort of the uplifting music and the lyrics, I think it goes back to the way I write songs, right? I think the songs are a reflection of my personality, which is sort of like very happy-go-lucky and sort of bubbly and generally speaking, happy. But I'm also I'm interested in politics. I'm interested in a lot of things that go very dark, right? And so it's natural for me to write lyrics that fit what I'm interested in, right? But the music comes out as happy. Whenever I've tried like making like really serious music and putting the lyrics to it, and it just feels disingenuous.
Yeah.
But when I do it like this, both things come from like a real place. The music is the way it's supposed to be, and the lyrics come from a place like I care about the stuff that I'm writing about. So when you put that together, it's a juxtaposition, but it works, at least in my head.
Yeah, I agree. It works, and we mentioned Towhider earlier, and they're another band that sort of has this upbeat, very poppy, positive, but that when you start looking into the lyrical content, there's a lot of like, if not dark, then like quite serious stuff that's being discussed, and on the track Beware the Blue Skies, which is probably my favorite album track from a boat, you seem to be critical of, I would say, one of the only superpowers left on this planet right now. But at the same time, I love that you throw in like a little self-deprecating mention of Norway at the end, right?
I do. It's been since my mom grew up in Brooklyn. I've always had a very strong connection to the U.S. And I remember before like the war in Afghanistan, before George Jr. I was always very proud of having that connection. I almost saw myself as like at least like a quarter American or something like that, and it was something that I was proud of. And I have a lot of family over there. I have friends over there, and generally after George Bush and as they went on, that sort of turned almost into shame, right? Because this great power that was a force for good, as at least it felt like that when I was a kid, right?
Yeah.
Sort of the illusion sort of goes away just like little by little, and you sort of realize that, oh shit, they're really not as great as they and I thought they were.
Yeah.
But that's a large like a big discussion. Like, was America ever great? Can they be great again? And all that sort of stuff.
But
that sort of influenced me a lot, I would say.
Yeah.
What was the question? I got derailed.
No, I think you sort of answered it, because anyone growing up in the 80s or 90s, I guess, and would sort of have that experience of the US being, the land of freedom and possibility and all that stuff. But I was like also thinking about that little pinprick you gave to Norway at the end of the.
Yes, that was the point. Yeah, and that's the same. The sort of the hypocrisy of Norway, and it's we're a very small country, but we think we're extremely important. And well, you're Norwegian, so you know that every time a Norwegian does something, it doesn't even have to be something big outside of Norway. Our journalists will ask anybody, like, how incredible is this person? What do you feel about him? What do you think about Norwegian women?
Exactly.
at the same time, but that particular pick print is like, well, we want to be negotiators of peace, right?
Yeah.
We're very big on that, and we're like, oh, we're trying to build bridges and blah blah blah. But at the same time, we build drone parts, the same drone parts that are used to kill hundreds, if not thousands, of people, are being manufactured not far from where my hometown is, in Lindesnes, actually, and we explain it by saying, well, we're not the ones arming them. We sell the parts to the US and they're the ones that put guns on it, so our conscience is clean. And I was like, no, it fucking isn't.
Oh yeah.
And we're one of the biggest manufacturers of weapons and arms in the world. I think we're like number 4. Little Norway is number 4, right? And so, and that's the same. Like, it's the lie you've been told. You live in Norway and everything's fucking dandy here, right? And it's a beautiful country. We're a happy people, blah blah blah. And there's also this sort of underside that, or underbelly that we do a lot of bad shit. We're just not aware of it. But when you go looking, it's like, what? No, whoa, damn.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah, the fact that you and I love how you touch on both those things in the lyrics of that track, both how, the big picture of a superpower going out and doing what they do in the world, but how, little Norway, who sort of likes to sit back and say, well, we're not a part of this, but we are very much a part of it, right? So
yeah, and we still are. I mean, when the US went into Iraq, what a fucking shit show that was. And George Bush saying like, God told me to do it. They had and Colin Powell with the weapons of mass destruction and everything, and Norway just we'll come along. And Tony Blair, and it's just horrible. And you got the weapon industry, right? With the big military. No, I can't remember what they call it.
Military complex, So
it's eternal profits from eternal war.
Yeah,
and I think you will never again see peace in Arabic countries. Only for a while, because there needs to be war, because the machine needs to be they earn too much money from doing it.
Yeah,
and it's far away, and so. And what ticks me off about that is not like these people are earning money off of it. It's just that impressionate kids and young people are going there to die for nothing, right? For a cause that isn't their own, not really, but they get tricked into thinking that it somehow defends America's freedom or Norway's freedom, and they're somehow stopping terrorists from blowing shit up, and they just die for nothing, and that's what ticks me off, right?
Well, I couldn't agree more with your take on it, and I find it interesting then that against this very serious sort of world politics and everything, you have this upbeat, positive poppy music, which gives it sort of this it's a very like almost like the music is being sarcastic with you.
At the end of that song, I mean, it really is so but the melody and all the other stuff came before the lyrics, but I think the lyrics sort of it gets that effect, and that was sort of intentional. I'll try different lyrics like to see what fits, and I remember when I wrote that, I was like, it could be silly, but no, this works. But so the songs come first.
Yeah, you write the music first, and then you work on lyrics. So that's how you. Yeah.
I'll usually write down. When the song sort of appears from the ether, I'll be singing along. I'll be singing gibberish, just and sometimes there's a little there's little lyrics that pop up as well, and usually I'll write lyrics based on those like sort of lines that pop up, and then suddenly I feel like, and it sort of feels like you're discovering the purpose of the song because the lyrics sort of appear as well. But usually when you change that and when you start like writing based on these lyrics, you start changing things, and it feels wrong a lot of the time. So on the song Captain Awkward, I did not do that. That's the first time I've not done that. That's a beer burp. Hey, that's the first time, and I really like it. It was a lot of fun. I decided to just use the gibberish that I sang when I made the song.
So that's where that's...
Those lyrics are absolutely nonsensical, but they feel right. They feel there's something when I sing the chorus, the lyrics make no sense, but the words feel like the right words that are supposed to be there, and it gives me it gives me an uplifting feeling, and it just feels right. When I start sort of thinking like, what am I trying to say here, and I write a lyric, it can work out very well, but sometimes it always feels like a little something was lost along the way, and I'm not sure why. I'm not saying that I'm writing a concept album now. I can't do that for every song. There wouldn't be much of a concept.
It's gonna be a weird concept, but yeah.
Yes, it would be. But that's actually an interesting idea to try.
I agree. Maybe that sounds
maybe on an EP or something.
Yeah.
I mean, if Camel can make an instrumental concept album, then anything.
Why not? Yeah. Why not? Yeah. Well, I want to move on to the. You did a lovely little live stream from the library in Bergen in, I think it was May last year. What were the challenges of doing, this live stream? And also you did acoustic versions of your songs, right? How did you have to change a lot of stuff?
Yeah, a little bit. Sure, because the songs are, there's a lot of stuff going on. But essentially a lot of the songs are either written by me on piano or acoustic guitar. So they work in that setting as well. I mean, some parts it get a little bit weird, but both me and Lars, we worked at that library. It was a fantastic place to work. So it was very easy to just, we want to do a live stream, okay. And so we set up a camera, and we were playing in our jammies, right? So we had a very it wasn't an air of seriousness around it, and we just wanted to do it for fun.
Yeah, it was a very laid back feeling, and yeah.
So it was very easy to do. I think we rehearsed maybe once or twice before it, and I was like, this sounds good. I mean, that is a positive thing about Moron Police, let's say, compared to Major Parkinson, where in Major Parkinson things have a more serious vibe, right? And it has to be good. It has to be a certain way. When in Moron Police, I sort of applaud the defects and all the things that go to hell, and you sort of just run with it. We don't use a click track live. Click track would be very a natural thing for us to use, and use some of the backing tracks. You get some of the strings in there, make it sound really big. But if you do that, you lose a lot of spontaneity, right? So if the drummer suddenly loses his drumsticks, or my guitar stops working, that's part of the show. That's part of the experience. That's what makes it like a unique experience. If you're just doing the same click track, Major Parkinson doesn't use click tracks either. That's not to say.
Oh, really?
So, No click tracks. It's all Lars in the back there just doing insane stuff. I remember he was sort of pissed off because people were telling him, you shouldn't use click tracks, you can't play your parts. Like, there's no click tracks. That's him in the back doing everything.
Oh, really?
So but you lose a little bit of the spontaneity, right? So something cool can happen, something absolutely embarrassing and terrible can happen. But in a band like Moron Police, where there's sort of a humorous element, that can be a positive thing. You run with that. As long as you're able to, as long as there's not a technical issue that makes you can't complete the show with it. But, so I like that. I like the spontaneity of it.
I find that if, what you said about the click tracks and, backing tracks and everything and the spontaneity, I wasn't aware that Major Parkinson didn't use that. Because the music is, like you said, complex, and I would think that was almost like a necessity to use on stage, make sure everything comes across, Because I remember, when I was younger, going to gigs before, backing tracks and things were so persuasive or were so common, you would be like, well, they have this piano part on the album, but there's no pianist on stage. I wonder what they're gonna do, right? So they played it on the acoustic guitar or something. But now a lot of bands is like, well, it's gonna be on the backing track, right? So so it is a bit different.
It's the easy way out. I mean, in some cases, sure, it's good. Like I can use. That's gonna sound like an insult, but I can use Devin Townsend, for example. He has huge music, right? And so it's very natural for him to use backing tracks. But I've seen him live a lot of times, and it's always fantastic and fun. But when he's playing the guitar in like the big mishmash of sound, I see he's playing guitar, but I don't know what are the notes that are his, because there's guitarists as well in those backing tracks. Yeah. And so, but on his last tour, on this Empath album, he didn't use any. And I didn't get to see that, which really annoyed me. But it sounds amazing because there's something about the connection to the audience as well. You don't want to just like have a sound of like you're putting on a CD player, just playing it. Just playing some tracks, right? You want to feel the connection. Devin Townsend is very good at establishing that connection, so he's not really a good example of that. But I think it's much more natural and a lot better for him if you don't use backing tracks, because it elevates everything else. Because if you play well and you know that the sound you're hearing is just those people on stage, it just creates. I'm a big fan of it, and you can't sort of hide behind things, right?
You're right.
So for Moron Police, I love doing vocal layers, right? I love doing choirs and harmonics and stuff like that, and I can't really do that live. Backing tracks on that would be natural, but I don't like that. And the other guys, they can't really sing as well. So my dream would be to have like backup singers live. But at the same time, that costs money, man. We don't have a lot of that, bro.
Of course it does, yeah. Well,
so, but
talking about live streams and or streaming events in general, I think we need to mention that you guys are, of course, a part of our upcoming Progspace online festival that's gonna happen on the 19th and 20th of November. So do you have any expectations for that event, and what can the people watching expect from Moron Police?
I'm not sure yet. We're filming something on Friday, but we'll see what it ends up being. We did sort of a playthrough video thing of Phantom Below from the album, and a lot of people have been like requesting, like, what are you guys playing? What the fuck's going on here? Yeah. And so we're thinking about doing something like that, maybe. Probably that. There's a chance it might be an acoustic thing. We'll see. Because we really like doing acoustic versions of those boat songs as well.
Of course, yeah.
So I'm not sure yet, and the deadline is fast approaching. So I've booked the film guy. He's going to be here in this weird house that I live in on Friday, and we'll see. They will see something.
well, that's good, and I'm looking very much forward to, with the the ethos of Moron Police, to see what you guys are gonna do. I'm sure it's gonna be very entertaining. We're fast coming up towards the end of our talk, but you mentioned after this EP there's a new Moron Police album, full-length album in the works, and I'm sure people are also interested in knowing what about Major Parkinson. Is there new stuff being worked on there as well?
Yes, very much so. It's going to be a big one. The same with both albums. The Moron Police thing is going to be the biggest, and it's already the hardest thing I've ever tried to do. It might be a train wreck, but I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
And the Major Parkinson thing is also extremely. What's the word for it? Well, they're reaching for the stars, right?
I see.
It's gonna be one part weird art project, just absolutely fucking bonkers, and there's gonna be one part that's absolutely the catchiest pop songs I've ever heard in my life, mixed with like Major Parkinson weirdness. I mean, it's such a huge endeavor. Like I'm almost glad that I moved to Oslo, so I don't have to be in the room while they try to figure this crap out, because it's going to be absolutely insane. I've never been more excited about two albums in my life.
No,
it's incredibly hard work. I've never had to work this hard for anything, really. So I'm very excited to see if we can get it over the finish line, both Major and Moron Police. The Major Parkinson thing is going to be, I guess, the catchiest music I've ever heard. I'll just say, like, Jon Ivar has an incredible ability to take stuff from like maybe the 80s and 70s, little references, and they're very obvious if you know them. Yeah. But he still makes it his own. It's not derivative of, for example, 80s pastiche sound. Exactly. And there's going to be some 80s stuff in there as well. But there's some of those vocal melodies. You think like, isn't that a song? And no, but it's all. I'm very excited, and I'm also very glad that I don't have to do more than guitar and some synths, because holy crap. But it's well underway. It's well underway, and it's a huge one. There's a lot of songs, and there's some very long songs. Same with Moron Police. There's going to be a song that's 22 minutes on the next album, which is almost the length of A Boat on the Sea, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's also the best song I've ever made. And some of the choruses were made with Univa from Major Parkinson, so he's a little bit part of it as well.
Wow. Well, I have to say, if I wasn't excited before, I truly am now. I want to thank you, Sondre, for being on the Progtalks with me.
My pleasure.
Yeah, all of you guys out there should, of course, follow Moron Police on their social media. Links will be in the description. I also recommend you to check out the new singles and the EP, The Stranger and the Hightide, when it releases on October 29th. You can listen to their music on all kinds of streaming services, or even better, I would say, go to Bandcamp and buy some music from them, because they deserve to.
Or our webpage.
Or the webpage, spend some money, give the guys some support, and, make them able to record more of this fantastic music. For those of you that enjoys what we're doing with the Progspace, please like and subscribe. Like I told you, we now have this buy us a coffee link below. That would also help. Until next time, stay safe and keep spreading that prog love. The Progtalks, produced by the Progspace. Main host, Rune Belsvik Reinås. Produced by Rune Belsvik Reinås, Vanessa and Matthias Kirsch. All graphics and animations by Vanessa Kirsch. Intro theme by Giuseppe Negri. Outro theme by Zach Munovitz. This was the Progtalks by the Progspace. See you in a week.